Montana Territory, 1879. The land was as unforgiving as it was beautiful, a vast expanse of untamed wilderness where only the strongest survived and the weak perished beneath the merciless western sun. 20-year-old Penelope Owen had learned this truth the hard way, watching her father's grave being dug into the hard Montana soil just 3 months after their arrival from Boston. The frontier had taken everything from her, her comfortable life back east, her doting mother to consumption years before, and now her father to a bandit's bullet. The West gives nothing and takes everything. Penelope whispered to herself as she stood on the porch of her father's half-built cabin, staring out at the mountains beyond. Her honey-blonde hair, usually pinned in a neat arrangement, now fell loosely around her shoulders, whipping in the wind like a golden banner of defiance. Her blue calico dress had seen better days, patched in several places, but still maintaining a hint of the Eastern refinement she'd brought with her. Survival was all that mattered now. Love was a luxury that had no place in this savage land. Every day was a battle against the elements, against hunger, against the constant dread of what would happen to a young woman alone on the frontier. Her father's meager savings wouldn't last the winter, and the neighbors, if you could call people living miles away neighbors, had their own struggles. "I need no one," she told herself each night before sleep claimed her. Attachment only leads to loss. It was her mantra, her shield against the crushing loneliness that threatened to overwhelm her when darkness fell. What Penelope wanted was simple: to sell her father's claim, gather enough money to return east, and forget she'd ever seen the Montana Territory. What she needed, though she refused to acknowledge it, was to find belonging in this new world, to heal the wounds of loss that had hardened her heart against any possibility of connection. Spring had just given way to summer when everything changed. Penelope was attempting to fix a broken fence post, her hands raw and blistered from the unfamiliar work, when the sound of approaching hoofbeats made her reach for her father's old rifle. "Ma'am," called a voice, deep but unmistakably young. "Seems like you could use a hand with that." The stranger who rode into her yard was unlike any cowboy she'd seen before. 25 years old at most, he sat tall in the saddle with an easy grace that spoke of a lifetime spent on horseback. His face was handsome, clean-shaven save for a light dusting of stubble that caught the afternoon sun. Sandy brown hair peeked out from beneath a well-worn hat, and his eyes, a striking shade of green, held none of the hardness she'd come to expect from frontier men. "Samuel Irwin," he introduced himself, dismounting with fluid grace. "Most folks call me Sam. I work for the Double Creek Ranch to the south." He gestured toward her failed attempt at fence repair. "That's not going to hold through the first strong wind, much less keep any livestock contained." Penelope straightened, bristling at his assessment. "I didn't ask for your opinion, Mr. Irwin, or your help." Something flickered in his eyes, amusement, perhaps, or admiration at her spirit. "No, ma'am, you didn't. But good fences make good neighbors, and I'd be a poor excuse for a neighbor if I rode by and left a lady to struggle with work that needs 2 sets of hands." "I'm managing fine on my own," she insisted, even as the post tilted pathetically to one side. Sam didn't argue. He simply removed his hat, revealing the sharp contrast between his sun-darkened face and the lighter skin of his forehead. "My boss sent me to check on the widow Harper down the valley. I'm a day ahead of schedule. Would save me from getting back to breaking horses too soon if I could lend a hand here." It was the way he presented it, not as charity but as a favor to himself, that finally made Penelope lower her defenses, if only slightly. "1 fence post," she conceded. "Then you can be on your way." 1 fence post became 2, then a full section of fence. As Sam worked, he spoke of simple things: the weather patterns of Montana, the best way to store food for winter, how to tell when a storm was approaching by watching the behavior of animals. His knowledge wasn't delivered with condescension, but shared like secrets between equals. As twilight approached, Penelope found herself inviting him to stay for supper. A simple meal of beans and cornbread, but the first she'd shared with another person in weeks. "You're not from around here originally," Sam observed as they sat on the porch after eating, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Penelope stiffened. "Boston. My father thought there were opportunities out west." Her voice turned bitter. Instead, there was just his death. Sam was quiet for a long moment. "The West takes from all of us," he finally said. "My parents died of fever when I was 14. Been making my own way since. Then you understand why I'm selling this place as soon as I can find a buyer, Penelope said. This land isn't meant for people like me. Sam turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful. Maybe. Or maybe you haven't given it a chance to show you its better nature. That night, after Sam had ridden off with a promise to return and check on her in a few days, Penelope lay awake, unsettled by the strange feeling his visit had left her with. A crack in the armor she'd built around herself since her father's death. True to his word, Sam returned 3 days later with a young milk cow in tow. Payment for your hospitality, he explained when Penelope protested the gift. And insurance that you won't starve while you're waiting for your buyer. His visits became a regular occurrence over the following weeks. Sometimes he brought small gifts, seeds for a kitchen garden, a book he'd traded for in town, a set of proper tools better suited to her smaller hands. Other times, he simply arrived to help with the endless chores that keeping even a small homestead required. Penelope told herself she merely tolerated his presence because of the practical benefits. Yet she found herself watching the horizon on days when he might appear and feeling an unfamiliar disappointment when he didn't. "Why do you keep coming back here?" she finally asked him one evening in late July as they sat sharing a simple supper. Sam looked up from his plate, surprise evident on his face. "Because you're here," he answered simply. "I'm not looking for a husband, if that's what you're hoping," Penelope said bluntly. "I'm leaving as soon as I can sell this place." Rather than being offended, Sam smiled. "I figured as much. But even folks who are passing through deserve a friend, don't they?" Friend. The word settled strangely in Penelope's chest. She hadn't allowed herself to think of such luxuries since arriving in Montana. The summer progressed, bringing with it scorching days and the occasional violent thunderstorm that rattled the cabin's walls. During one such storm, Sam arrived at her door drenched and leading his horse, which had gone lame on the trail. "You can't travel in this," Penelope said, practical concerns overriding any impropriety. "You'll have to stay until it passes." Confined together in the small cabin as rain lashed against the windows, something shifted between them. Sam spoke of his dreams, a small ranch of his own someday, a place where he answered to no one but himself and the land. "Why not go back east?" Penelope challenged. "Where life is easier." Sam shook his head. "I've never seen the east, but I know it's not for me. Out here, a man is measured by what he does, not who his father was or how much money he has." He looked at her intently. "The West is hard, yes, but it's honest, and it rewards those who understand it." "It took my father," Penelope said, her voice catching. "And it might take me someday too," Sam acknowledged. "But until then, it gives me every sunrise over the mountains, every star in a sky so big it makes you feel both insignificant and infinite at the same time." His voice softened. "Maybe what matters isn't how long we live, but how fully." That night, as the storm raged outside, Penelope felt something break loose inside her, a rigid belief beginning to crack. The following week brought a new danger. Penelope was returning from collecting eggs when she spotted 3 riders approaching, rough-looking men whose appearance sent a chill down her spine. She barely made it to the cabin and her father's rifle before they arrived. "We're looking for Samuel Irwin," the leader announced, his voice carrying an edge that made Penelope's grip tighten on her weapon. "Heard he's been spending time at this property." "I don't know anyone by that name," she lied, standing firm in her doorway. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's funny, because we followed his tracks right to your door not 3 days ago." He leaned forward in his saddle. "When you see him, you tell him Vance Tucker is looking to settle an old score. He'll know what it means." After they rode away, Penelope remained on alert, jumping at every sound until Sam's familiar figure appeared on the horizon the next day. She rushed out to meet him, words tumbling out as she relayed the encounter. Sam's face grew serious. "Vance Tucker," he repeated, a muscle working in his jaw. "I should have known he'd find me eventually." "What does he want with you?" Penelope demanded. Sam was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. 3 years ago, I was riding with a different outfit. Tucker was the foreman. He had a habit of skimming money from the ranch owner and blaming it on cattle rustlers. His green eyes met hers. I caught him in the act. When I threatened to tell the owner, Tucker tried to kill me. I managed to escape, but not before I shot him in the shoulder." "You shot him?" Penelope whispered. "It was him or me," Sam said simply. "I've been moving from ranch to ranch ever since, trying to stay ahead of his vengeance. The revelation hit Penelope like a physical blow. This man she'd allowed into her life, who had begun to make her question her resolve to leave Montana, was being hunted. Her instinct for self-preservation screamed at her to distance herself immediately. "You should go," she said, her voice cold, "and not come back. I want no part in your troubles." Pain flashed across Sam's face, but he nodded. "I understand. I never meant to bring danger to your door, Penny." It was the first time he'd shortened her name, the intimacy of it making her heart twist unexpectedly. As Sam turned to leave, something made Penelope call after him. "Will they kill you?" He looked back, his expression resigned. "Tucker won't stop until one of us is dead. That's the way of things out here." She watched him ride away, telling herself it was for the best. The West took everything eventually. Better to sever this connection before it grew deeper, before she had one more loss to mourn. Yet in the days that followed, Penelope found herself unable to focus on anything but worry for Sam. The fence he'd repaired, the garden he'd helped plant, the books they'd discussed by lamplight. Everything reminded her of his absence. For the first time since arriving in Montana, the loneliness felt unbearable. A week after Sam's departure, Penelope rode into the small town of Clearwater, determined to inquire about potential buyers for her father's claim. As she tied her horse outside the general store, a conversation between two men caught her attention. "Ambush planned for Irwin when he comes through Blackfoot Pass," one was saying. "Tucker's got 4 men with him. Poor boy won't stand a chance." Penelope froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Before she could question her actions, she was approaching the men. "Excuse me," she interrupted. "When is this ambush supposed to happen?" The men looked at her in surprise. "Tomorrow, from what I heard," the taller one answered. "Tucker's been boasting about it in the saloon. Says Irwin rides through that pass every other Friday on his way to check the northern pastures." Tomorrow. The knowledge hit Penelope like a physical blow. Sam would ride unsuspecting into a trap, outnumbered and unprepared. Unless someone warned him. The rational part of her mind argued that this wasn't her problem. Sam had brought this danger on himself. Getting involved would only entangle her in the very violence she was trying to escape. And yet, in that moment of decision, Penelope realized a truth she'd been denying for weeks. Sam Irwin had done more than repair her fences and bring her supplies. He had shown her that even in this harsh land, connection was possible. That the frontier, for all its dangers, could also offer moments of profound beauty and unexpected kindness. Without further hesitation, Penelope mounted her horse and rode hard for the Double Creek Ranch. The foreman was skeptical when she arrived asking for Sam, but something in her urgency convinced him to reveal that Sam had already departed for his northern rounds, taking the route through Blackfoot Pass as expected. "I need the fastest horse you have," Penelope demanded. When the foreman hesitated, she added, "There are men waiting to kill him in that pass." The change was immediate. Within minutes, Penelope was on a fresh mount, riding harder than she ever had in her life, taking a shortcut the foreman had hastily explained might intercept Sam before he reached the pass. The terrain was treacherous, rocky slopes giving way to thick pine forests, streams swollen with recent rain. Twice she nearly lost her seat when the horse stumbled on loose rock. But fear for Sam drove her forward, ignoring the growing ache in her muscles and the risk she was taking. She spotted him just as he was approaching the entrance to the pass, a lone rider on a familiar dun-colored horse. "Sam," she shouted, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "Sam, stop." He turned at the sound, disbelief washing over his features as she galloped toward him. "Penny? What are you—" "Ambush," she gasped, reining in beside him. "Tucker and 4 men, waiting in the pass." Sam's expression hardened as he glanced toward the narrow passage ahead. "How did you know?" "Overheard it in town," she said, still breathing hard. I couldn't let you ride in there unwarned." Something shifted in Sam's eyes, a softening, a wonder. "You rode all this way to warn me? After telling me to stay away?" Before Penelope could answer, a rifle shot echoed through the canyon, the bullet kicking up dirt near their horse's hooves. "They've spotted us," Sam said grimly, reaching for his revolver. "Get behind those rocks." Now, what followed was a nightmare of gunfire and shouted threats. Tucker and his men, realizing their ambush had been discovered, began advancing from both ends of the pass, trying to pin Sam and Penelope down. You should never have gotten involved in this, Sam said, his face grim as he checked his ammunition. This isn't your fight. Penelope, crouched beside him with her father's rifle in hand, felt a strange calm settle over her. I made it my fight when I decided you were worth saving. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding, and then there was no more time for words as Tucker's men closed in. Sam was a formidable shot, and Penelope discovered an unexpected steadiness in her own aim. 2 of Tucker's men retreated with injuries, but the remaining 3, including Tucker himself, continued their advance. We need to move, Sam said urgently. They're trying to flank us. As they scrambled toward better cover, a bullet grazed Sam's arm, causing him to stumble. In that vulnerable moment, Tucker emerged from behind a boulder, his rifle aimed directly at Sam's chest. End of the trail, Irwin, Tucker snarled. Time seemed to slow as Penelope raised her rifle. She had never shot a man before, had never imagined she would. But in that moment, with Sam's life hanging in the balance, she pulled the trigger without hesitation. Tucker fell, clutching his leg where her bullet had struck. His remaining men, seeing their leader down, lost their nerve and retreated, dragging Tucker with them. The sudden silence was deafening. Sam turned to Penelope, his expression a mix of shock and admiration. You just saved my life. She lowered the rifle, her hands trembling now that the danger had passed. I suppose that makes us even, she managed, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sam crossed to her in 2 strides and, heedless of his bleeding arm, pulled her into an embrace that seemed to contain all the words neither of them had been brave enough to say until now. I thought I'd never see you again, he murmured against her hair. So did I, Penelope admitted. And then I realized I couldn't bear the thought. They made their way carefully back to Double Creek Ranch, where Sam's wound was tended and the story of the ambush reported to the local sheriff. Tucker and his men had fled the territory, but warrants would ensure they couldn't return without facing justice. In the days that followed, as Sam recovered at the ranch, Penelope faced the truth that had been revealed to her during those terrifying moments in the past. The West had indeed taken much from her, but it had also given her something she never expected to find. A man whose courage and kindness had breached the walls around her heart. I can't offer you the comforts of Boston, Sam said one evening as they sat on the ranch house porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. But if you stayed, he hesitated, then reached for her hand. If you stayed, I'd spend every day trying to show you the beauty in this land alongside its harshness. Penelope looked out at the vast Montana landscape, so different from the crowded streets of her childhood. I came west believing it was a place where people could only survive alone, she said slowly. I was wrong. It's a place where we need each other more than anywhere else. She turned to face him, seeing the future in his steady green eyes. My father's claim needs a lot of work, she said, a smile playing at her lips. More than I could manage alone. Sam's face brightened with hope. Is that an invitation? It's a beginning, Penelope answered, and when Sam's hand found hers, she knew with certainty that some things were worth fighting for, even in the unforgiving West. By the following spring, the Owen homestead had transformed. A proper barn now stood where once there had been only a lean-to. The garden had expanded, promising summer vegetables and autumn harvest. Inside the cabin, Penelope had created a home with simple comforts. Curtains at the windows, shelves lined with books, the aroma of fresh bread often filling the air. On a perfect May morning, with wildflowers coloring the meadow and birdsong filling the air, Samuel Irwin and Penelope Owen were married beneath an arch Sam had constructed from young saplings. The ceremony was small, just the preacher from town, a few neighbors, and Sam's friends from the Double Creek Ranch, but it felt right for 2 people who had found each other against all odds in the vastness of the frontier. I never imagined finding love in Montana territory, Penelope confessed that night as they stood on the porch of what was now their home, the stars spreading like diamonds across the velvet sky. I thought the West had nothing to give me. Sam's arms encircled her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. And now, she turned in his embrace to face him, the man who had taught her that even in the harshest places, the human heart could find roots and flourish. Now I know that what matters isn't where you build your life, but who you build it with. As Sam's lips met hers, Penelope knew with absolute certainty that the frontier that had once seemed so desolate had given her the greatest gift of all, a love worth fighting for, a partnership strong enough to weather whatever storms might come, and a home built not just of timber and nails, but of shared dreams and mutual devotion. The West had indeed taken much from Penelope Owen, but in Samuel Irwin, it had returned to her something infinitely more precious: the courage to open her heart again, and the promise that no matter how harsh the land might be, they would face it together.